the vast expanse of the Arabian Desert, where the golden sands seemed to stretch endlessly beneath a blazing sun, there once lived a prince named Zayd. He was the only son of Sultan Khalid, a ruler known for his wealth and power. Zayd lived in a grand palace, surrounded by opulence and servants who catered to his every whim. Yet, despite his riches, he was a young man, unaware of the world beyond the high walls of his palace. Prince Zayd had grown up in comfort, never having to lift a finger for his needs. The bustling markets, the toiling farmers, and the humble nomads of the desert were all strangers to him. To Zayd, they were merely tales told by his tutors, not realities he cared to understand. His days were filled with leisure, hunting with falcons, feasting on exotic dishes, and dreaming of adventures that required no hardship. He saw the world through the lens of privilege, believing that his wealth and title made him superior to all. Too, one fateful day, Zayd's life took a turn he could never have foreseen. The royal caravan, carrying the prince and his entourage, set out on a journey across the desert. They were traveling to a distant oasis where a grand festival was to be held in honor of the Sultan. The caravan was a sight to behold, with richly adorned camels, silk-draped tents, and treasures meant to impress neighboring rulers. Zayd rode at the center, shaded by an ornate canopy, oblivious to the harshness of the desert around him. As the sun reached its zenith, the desert began to shift. A fierce wind arose, carrying grains of sand that stung like needles. The sky darkened as a sandstorm loomed on the horizon. The caravan came to a halt, and panic spread among the servants and guards. The storm was unlike anything they had ever seen, a roaring, swirling wall of sand that swallowed the landscape. Despite the guards' efforts to protect him, Zayd was separated from the caravan. His camel bolted, frightened by the storm, and carried him far into the desert. Blinded and battered by the relentless sand, Zayd clung to the animal, his heart pounding with fear. When the storm finally subsided, he found himself alone, surrounded by an ocean of dunes. Zayd's first reaction was disbelief. How could this happen to him, the prince of a mighty kingdom? He called out for his guards, his voice echoing in the emptiness, but there was no response. The desert was silent except for the soft whisper of the wind. The blazing sun beat down mercilessly, and Zayd realized he had no water, no food, and no idea how to find his way back. As the hours passed, the prince's arrogance began to wane. Hunger and thirst gnawed at him, and the vastness of the desert made him feel small and insignificant. For the first time in his life, Zayd was truly alone, with no one to command and no luxury to shield him from reality. Despair threatened to consume him, but a spark of determination flickered in his heart. He could not give up. Zayd wandered the desert for what felt like an eternity. The shifting dunes offered no landmarks, and each step was a struggle against exhaustion. His fine robes, once a symbol of his status, were now tattered and covered in sand. Just when he thought he could go no further, he spotted a cluster of black tents in the distance. Summoning the last of his strength, he made his way toward them. The tents belonged to a nomadic tribe, the Bedouins, who lived in harmony with the desert. They were skilled in survival, their lives shaped by the harsh environment. When they saw Zayd's pitiful state, they took him in without question. The tribe's leader, a wise elder named Umar, offered Zayd water and food, saving his life. Living among the Bedouins was a revelation for Zayd. Their way of life was simple, but filled with resilience and dignity. They treated each other as equals, sharing resources and working together to overcome challenges. Zayd, who had always relied on others, now had to learn the skills necessary for survival. He fetched water, tended to camels, and helped pitch tents. The tasks were arduous, but they gave him a sense of purpose he had never known. Through his time with the tribe, Zayd began to understand the value of hard work and the strength of community. He saw how the Bedouins respected the desert, taking only what they needed and giving thanks for its gifts. Their humility and wisdom contrasted sharply with his former life of excess and entitlement. Slowly, Zayd shed his arrogance and embraced a new way of thinking. One evening, as the tribe gathered around a fire, Umar shared stories of their ancestors. He spoke of a prince from long ago who had ruled with kindness and wisdom, earning the love of his people. Zayd listened intently, realizing for the first time that true leadership was not about wealth or power, but about serving others and earning their respect. As weeks turned into months, Zayd became an integral part of the tribe. He grew stronger, both physically and mentally, and his heart softened with compassion. The Bedouins taught him the art of navigation by the stars, and he learned to read the desert's signs. With their guidance, he began to plan his journey back to his kingdom, not as the spoiled prince he had been, but as a man transformed by his experiences. When Zayd finally returned to his palace, his father and the court were overjoyed. They had believed him lost forever, but the Zayd who stood before them was not the same young man who had left on the caravan months ago. He spoke of the lessons he had learned and the kindness of the Bedouins who had saved him. He urged his father to implement reforms that would improve the lives of the common people, inspired by the values of the tribe. Under Zayd's influence, the kingdom began to change. The Sultan established trade routes with the Bedouins, recognizing their wisdom and resilience. The palace opened its doors to the poor, offering aid and education. Zayd himself became a beloved figure among the people, earning their admiration not through displays of wealth, but through acts of service and humility. The story of Prince Zayd and the Sandstorm became a legend, passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that even the most privileged among us can be humbled by the forces of nature and the strength of human connection. The moral of the story was clear. True greatness lies not in riches or titles, but in the ability to understand and uplift others.